Alrighty. Howdy, everybody. Good to see everyone again. If you've been with us before, you know that we have historically had some sort of audio issue, but I think we've already worked those out. So hopefully, everyone's hearing my voice at this point. But thank you for joining us here at Scinary for another webinar for Breaking the Chain, Detecting and Severing Attack Paths. So this one is all about the attack chain. We're going to be going over a few different things. I am joined here today by everybody should recognize Brazos Wortham, our Director of Strategic Initiatives. And then we are also joined today by Mario Ortiz. He is our Assistant SOC Manager. So I'll let them kind of say their piece right quick.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Yep, a lot of people that I'm seeing in the attendee list. Definitely, I've probably either talked to on the phone or seen in person. My name is Brazos Wortham. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives here at Scinary, and I will be covering some pretty fun stuff in case 2 today. So a lot of stuff that I think y'all will really enjoy.
My name is Mario Ortiz. I am the Assistant SOC Manager here at Scinary. Many of you may have seen me, but I want to say a majority of you have not. I'm typically the guy behind the keyboard, or at least camera off during meetings. They tricked me into getting in this webinar. So you guys might have seen my my counterpart, Joseph Hamilton. So today they got me. So very happy to be here.
No about tricked. I think it was a completely your own choice there.
Look, we're looking for the most qualified person, and it just so happened to be you.
Thank you.
And then I am John Dunaway. I'm the account manager here at Scinary. So most all of you have probably talked to me at some point. That is kind of my job. I'm the talk to guy. So again, we've got a lot of fun stuff planned here today. So I don't want to take up too much time. I did just want to say a quick and early thank you, to our partners over at Howard, just as being with us and helping sponsor this one and kind of get the word out with us. So big thank you to them. We'll have more to say about them later at the end. But for now, what we're here to do, we're going to go ahead and walk through kind of briefly what is an attack chain, kind of some of the key terms that you'll need to know for this one. And then we'll walk you through 2 examples of attacks that we were able to detect and stop here at Scinary. And then we'll kind of walk you through the specifics of those cases, as well as one of the things that we do for all of our clients to help mitigate the chances and risks of things like this happening to them. But with that, I will go ahead and Mario, if you wouldn't mind bringing up the first picture so we can kind of get some definitions going here. Let's see.
All right, yeah, I can do that. Just give me 1 second.
No worries. I will say, while you're doing that, I'll kind of go ahead and, for those of you that haven't spoken to us before, that you don't really know much about Scinary, so what we do is we are a cybersecurity company, obviously, and we kind of have our cybersecurity package. We deal largely with K-12 education, local government, that space. And we have our package that we've built up to address a lot of the risks that are faced by those organizations. Key components that we're going to kind of focus on today are going to be our Centurion appliance, which is a network monitoring piece. So it monitors network traffic. We'll kind of touch on these other 2 later, but we'll have our Canary and our log forwarder. They're both kind of complementary to that. And then the other one that we'll kind of be mentioning throughout today is going to be EDR, or endpoint detection and response. Just they're monitoring endpoint specific threats. So brief definitions on that one, and then I'll hand it over to you, Mario.
And one thing I do want to say, sorry to cut you off there, about these 2 events that we worked specifically, and we'll obviously, as we go through here, you'll see the details, but these are 2 live events that we did work within the K through 12 ecosystem. So these were schools that did get targeted by threat actors. So the data that you are seeing is from live environments, live IR events that we worked and again stopped. So again, all this data is true data. Nothing here was fabricated or anything else. Again, true IR events that we worked, both me and Mario were on both of these cases.
Absolutely, and emphasis on real. I don't think anyone really wants to wake up at between 1 and 3 in the morning and have to go to work the next day. So yeah, glad we get to share our little piece here. So hopefully my screen is being presented appropriately. So I'm going to be going over our first incident response case. Here we have it titled Access Break, and we can get a little bit more into detail here in the next slide. So first, we're going to be covering what an attack chain is. Very briefly, here's a small depiction as to more or less the attacks that we see in the wild. So an attack chain is essentially the chain of events that threat actors will take leading up to execution and at the very end, ransomware in most cases here. So here we have a small graphic to kind of show the flow of what we typically see out in the wild. Starting from the left, we have the threat actor. In these particular cases, we're going to start with compromised credentials, grabbing an account. 9 out of 10 times, this is the attack that we see. It is quite rare that we see things like exploitation or 0 days. While they do happen, they're not as common as people getting their accounts compromised. So in this particular case, we're going to see that once they grab those compromised credentials, that account that they were able to pop, typically here we're going to see things such as compromising the firewall. So in my example, we're going to be going over a FortiGate that had their SSL VPN open to the world. They were able to go in there, and then from there, they were able to begin the second phase, which is recon. So the first phase is going to be initial access. Following that, they're going to want to know where they're at. So once they get in, they're going to begin the reconnaissance. They're going to find out what's there, what they can touch, and really what they can find, because these are going to be very targeted attacks. In this particular example, they're going to be dropped off onto one of the servers that wasn't a domain controller, just something that was on the internal network itself. And then from there, they were able to access a remote desktop session onto the domain controller or the core of the network. And typically we see these attack chains. They're pretty bread and butter as it goes. We've worked many of these scenarios, and this was just more to give you an idea as to kind of what we're dealing with, the main ideas as to what this attack involved. If we go to the next page here.
Well, really, quickly before you do, I did want to ask. So, kind of going over this one as a gloss through of what an attack chain looks like. What are some of the hallmarks of this particular of case one here that like with the compromised credentials that kind of really stood out about this one? Like I guess really to rephrase the question, what would be the risks surrounding the compromised credentials?
The reason these can be a huge headache for really any sort of control that you might have out there is the question of how do you differentiate a threat actor from an authentic login? From our position, even if that person got their credentials compromised, got their account hacked, how would we know that that account is hacked or not? From our perspective, and especially from the perspective of things like EDR, that is a real login that user supplied the correct credentials and were able to log in successfully. It would be very difficult to detect right off the bat just from a login whether or not that account was hacked or not, which can have situations just like this.
And then how would an attacker get the credentials in the first place?
So it's a little bit easier than you think, which is a little scary. But this can be from things like phishing, social engineering, right? Getting that bad email where it asks for your username and password, social security, mother's maiden name, right? The whole 9 yards. And the other ways would be through data breaches, password breaches. There are multiple pages on the dark web where you can just go and buy user credentials, password lists, and other details that are out there.
I know that stuff sells for like pennies on the dark web. You'll see some of that stuff for maybe $2, $3. So it's not very expensive to buy these lists or even bulk passwords. It's fairly cheap for those guys.
So following this, now we're actually going to get into the meat and potatoes of what happened. So we're going to talk about how we were able to break this attack chain and what our impact was. So here we're going to see that same graphic that I had just a second ago. But now we're going to go over some of the more finer details and how we were able to stop this attack. So here I want to highlight specifically not just our Centurion device, that is our flagship device, it's our network detection response, but I also want to talk about the additional feature that it has on there, which is our log forwarder. So some of you may, if you guys are subscribed to our services, some of you may be familiar with our log forwarder. To give a little bit of a background, so Centurion does monitor all the network traffic, so we have visibility on the network side. However, we have the log forwarder, which can be installed on all your critical servers. And what that will do is actually feed in all of the server logs, the EBTX logs, into our Centurion appliance, which can give us that extra visibility. And not only that, but we actually have curated some alerts for specific events. And we'll get into that here in just a second. To give a little bit of background as to what more or less happened, we can go to the next page here. So we're going to talk about the detection methods that we had. So first and foremost, we had Centurion, of course, and we had that's always on. It's always alerting, always monitoring. But we do have a 24/7/365 SOC. So you guys are seeing me here today. I work during the morning, but we do have a night crew who we make sure that they're extremely vigilant while everyone's asleep. And when they are really vigilant, they wake us up. So here we're going to go through the chronological order as to how this attack happened and what we did. So beginning on this first slide here, we're actually going to show you some images of the logs that we had collected. So first and foremost, we're going to see that FortiGate that we talked about earlier. So the account in question that was compromised there on the top left, we can see was SYS or sys_Fortinet. We can see that they had a successful login that day. And then on the right-hand side, we can see that they began installing software. Here on the top right, we can see setup.msi was launched. So typically, we don't see accounts like this just log in and then do actions. Like right off the bat, these were about 2 minutes apart from one another. Even if it is authorized events, if this is a real technician doing something, we still reach out and verify. It doesn't cost a thing but a couple minutes to call you and say, hey, are you doing this? Yes, awesome, great. We'll go ahead and close this event. So that was going to be more or less kind of the first little red flag, like why is this happening? It doesn't speak too much maliciously quite yet, but it is starting to lead to there. Following this, we were actually able
really
to
quick.
see. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Mario. I didn't want to cut you off too much, but really quick there, I did want to ask: would there have been anything that they could have done from the firewall once they were in that maybe they didn't, or is there another way that they could have leveraged the firewall in this case?
So in this particular case, since they were able to get in through the SSL VPN login portal, so there are a couple things that they can do to leverage the firewall itself before actually getting into the network. So the first thing would be one of the main items that we always look at whenever there is an issue with a firewall is we ask them to kill the SSL VPN, kill the network for the duration of us actually responding to this incident. So if they have administrative privilege or have the ability to make configuration changes, so they can actually re-enable that stuff once it comes back online. They have the ability to just undo the settings that we have. Secondarily, they can allow and expose internal resources out to the world so they can conduct further malicious actions on there. So maybe the first server that was compromised, they'll actually put another server out on the net that they know that they can pinpoint an attack. So those are going to be some of the more major things that they can leverage through the firewall.
And I actually think
Really,
with this particular event, they what they did once they got into the environment is that they originally got in with the SSL VPN, but the SYS Fortinet account that they were able to compromise had the ability to was an administrator on the FortiGate, and so they just turned around, accessed the management page, and then exposed the management page to on the WAN side. So even shutting down the SSL VPN, it cut down one access method, but they had opened up a secondary access method. So that's something that we also always check during these types of attacks, is to ensure that they're not opening other persistence or other access methods within the environment.
gotcha.
Absolutely. And one thing we will touch on here as well as something as simple as just making another user and pass that they can, just in case the account that they originally compromised ends up getting shut down or they change the credentials, they'll have a backup account. So that's just, some of the other ways that they can leverage that firewall or other vectors to maintain that persistence. So now here talking a little bit more as the events that unfolded, and I can be a little bit more personable since our night crew. So the analyst in question was Elijah. I was the first one he called, so he got me on the first ring, thankfully. But if we focus here on this first picture at 1:01 a.m. Through our log forwarder, we were able to see that this GADS admin was able to disable the on-site EDR. So at the very bottom there, you can see the message, a process has ended. And then there at the very top, you can see that the EDR that they were using at the time was Sophos. So I wanted to highlight this, just knowing that they did have one control in place. And this kind of speaks a little bit more to John's question earlier of, the EDR and if this would have caught it. So EDR in this case couldn't differentiate that this was a threat actor to the machines, to the software itself. This was that person logging in, doing what it was supposed to do. And so as the threat actor went in there, they're very aware of most of the controls that are out there, but very evident that they tried to disable EDR in this case.
Do you have any idea on how they were able to kill the EDR in this case?
So this one, if I'm not mistaken, and hopefully you can back me up, Brazos, because we were brothers in arms that night. But typically, at least in this case, I believe they just had a kill script that would continuously kill the EDR process. Granted, different EDRs, they handled things slightly differently between different platforms. But I believe in this particular attack, they just had a script that continuously killed the process itself. So in those moments where it would boot itself back up, they were able to execute whatever they needed to. I know another common way that threat actors can kind of bypass EDR, as it were, is there's a pretty common malware out there. Like one is EDR Killer, where it can actually do things like leverage the Windows firewall or the Windows system processes to actually kill or stop those processes.
Yeah, and this one was pretty rudimentary. They just, again, Mario's correct. I think they went in there and all it was a basic script that would kill the process. And in between those seconds of the process self restarting, they would go and initiate different commands on the machine that would have been caught by the EDR. The EDR killer is really common. What they'll do is they'll often leverage, I think, the Windows filtering platform that's built in with a vulnerability called Bring Your Own Driver or Vulnerable Driver, where they'll actually block the outbound connections to the cloud endpoints that the EDR actually tries to connect to. In this case, they didn't deploy any of that type of malware onto the machine. It was fairly basic, but it's still effective regardless of how basic it was.
And we can actually, we do have evidence of how effective that was in these next couple images that I'd like to share. So following this, this was at 1:01 or 1 a.m. and 1 minute. So the next event that I want to highlight here is actually our alerting system that we have built in tandem with our log forwarder. So here we can see a live alert. So this was an actual alert that Centurion kicked off to our night crew. It pinged off at 1:03 and so this was probably when we were getting involved, the day crew. So our night crew saw this, and we acted immediately. If memory serves me, I believe we reached out about 2 minutes later with hey, we noticed this user has logged in. It is very late at night. We just want to make sure this is you guys logging in and doing whatever actions you're doing. And then when our night ranger Elijah didn't end up getting a response quickly, typically if you're up this late at night, you're really quick to respond. It is rare the time that we've emailed a technician doing work and then they don't respond fairly quickly. When we didn't get a response, about 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes afterwards, we began calling the user, making sure that this was them. If an email doesn't reach them, typically a phone call will reach them 95% of the time. And so when they weren't responding, that's kind of when the IR mode kicked in, like, hey, this is getting beyond anomalous. This is getting malicious. And to further kind of explain that, we can see that once not just the EDR was killed and the user was able to log in to the domain controller, granted, if you see that in log source DC01, so this user was able to actually pivot from wherever they landed on originally, the original access on that server, all the way to the domain controller or the center of the network. Following that, we were able to pick up rclone traffic. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with rclone. It is a very common tool that we see, especially in attack chains like this. It is typically used for data exfiltration. So we have seen it used in a correct manner or in a true authentic manner, but we had based on all our notes, based on heuristics, this was not a common tool for this client to use. So whenever Elijah ended up seeing this, we were all involved at this point. We had all been woken up and had 2 or 3 shots of coffee, and we began actually investigating the scenario here, because whenever we see rclone, we can tell that this attack has progressed in a way that we need to go ahead and get some immediate action. I actually do remember when he called me, when he originally saw some of the traffic, he was saying, Mario, this is bad. We gotta wake people up. We gotta take care of this. So thankfully, due to their due diligence, we were able to kind of capture all this and have a meaningful impact in a meaningful time. And so the last image I want to show you is the very next step here, which kind of summarizing everything. So they were able to get into the firewall. They were able to pivot to the domain controller using the GADS admin account. They were able to kill EDR, and then they began doing data exfiltration through rclone. So the third step here in the attack chain is going to be that secondary persistence that we talked about. So here on the left, we can see the commands that were being ran. Again, this was thanks to the log forwarder that was installed on their domain controllers. Here you can see on the left-hand side DC01. But we actually were able to capture artifacts of them trying to install and run remote software, RMM software. So there I have two highlighted. It looks like they tried to install and execute both Atera and Splashtop, which are two extremely common RMMs that we see in a lot of the attacks that we work. Following that, we sounded all the whistles, got everyone up. It was about 3 in the morning, I think, at this point, between 3 and 4 in the morning, when we finally got a hold of our clients, and we went ahead and did immediate actions. We killed the internet so we could grab all our forensics evidence, and then here were some of the major line items that we recommended, so we could get this out and done by the time the next school day started. So some of the main items here, the first one is going to be restricting that SSL VPN access to only required users. What we see typically is, unless you go and do further configurations, that can be open to every user in the organization. And that can pose a huge risk. Granted that typically most of the servers, items, computers, endpoints on the SSL VPN, they're going to be for your core network. They're going to be critical infrastructure. So if a threat actor were to get in through there, they kind of have the keys of the kingdom. They're able to kind of touch and get to whatever they're really looking for. And in this case, it was the domain controller. Second to that, we have making sure that all the passwords were reset for any users that were affected, as well as removing any unused or unfamiliar accounts. One of the big things here that we saw is this threat actor, whenever they got onto the network, they actually began making multiple accounts in multiple different places. This was evident by whenever we were going through the logs that we had collected, the users that they created did not follow the scheme that the organization used, so it kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. And so when we asked them, like, hey, do you happen to know this account? They're like, nope, never seen that account before. So we're like, yeah, you need to get rid of that guy. And so we did that multiple different places. And so that's just something else that threat actors do. They're super sticky, trying to stay in there, get what they need. The third point here that we have is making sure that the firewall was patched and upgraded. While we don't think this was the initial vector, we don't think there was any exploit on it. Just shoring up those loose ends, as it were, making sure everything is up to date to the latest stable version, just further reduces your risk on that attack surface. And then the big final thing was, of course, they tried to have RMM installed all over the place, particularly on the servers. So we made sure to go clean up anything that shouldn't have been there: our clone, Atera, Splashtop, and then any other third-party items that we had seen there. And so those were some of the major items that I wanted to point out for this specific case study. It was very fun, I'll tell you. Waking up 1:30, I think the biggest thing for me was how quickly we were able to act on this. So within minutes of the alert coming through, we were able to go and do our investigation, and we found fairly quickly that this was going to be an issue, that this was an active attack. And so once all the bells rang and we got all the people that we needed to online, between the hours of I believe 1 and about 6 a.m., we were able to find the issue, fix the issue, and get them back up and running before the next school day had started. So to us, it was a very, very long night, but to anyone else who wasn't involved, it's almost as if it didn't happen. So I did want to highlight that as well. But that about brings me. Yeah, absolutely. Pass it back to John.
Yeah. And I see, Braz, that you did just answer Barry's question there, but just for everybody, in case you didn't see it, Barry did ask, would having MFA on the VPN accounts have prevented this attack from happening? And Brazos gave a very quick follow-up on that one. Yes, in this attack it would have, and predominantly that is one of the things that we, as a cybersecurity company, we absolutely endorse is MFA anywhere and everywhere possible, just because it does help stop a lot of these sorts of attacks. I will also say,
oh, sorry, John, didn't mean to interrupt there, but any sort of credential-based attacks largely do get prevented by MFA being part, especially if it's phishing-resistant MFA. Think SSO with like passkeys, anything of that nature is what we would deem phishing resistant. And so that being enabled either on the SSL VPN, Google accounts, wherever that we can put it, drops the risk for these types of attacks significantly, even in multiple areas, right? We get the SSL VPN as one, but let's say the RDP to the domain controller, if we had MFA there, could have slowed down the attack, if not have prevented it entirely.
All right. Well, I think with that, Brazos, case 2.
Yeah, we get to jump into the second one here. So I will go ahead and share my screen.
While he's doing that, I will say, if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If we don't answer them directly in Brazos' presentation, we will get to it here at the end for a Q&A session. So go ahead and start just throwing those out there. We'll try and respond to them as quickly as we can. And, you know, if it takes a little while, we'll get to it.
All right, can y'all see that?
That we can.
Awesome. All right. Go ahead and share. So the case that I'm going to be working, we've titled Recon Break. And so one of the things here, the very similar chain to Mario's here, basically following the exact same attack path that in case 1, again, as Mario had said, we see this is probably one of the most common attack chains that we see. A set of compromised credentials utilized to log into an SSL VPN, followed by reconnaissance of the internal organization, lateral movement, generally through some form of remote desktop into a high profile or critical server. And then followed by data exfiltration, and then ultimately ransomware if we're unable to detect it. Right. So in probably the last 14, 15 months of IR events that we've worked, I would say 99.9% of these are following this exact attack path. And one of the things that you may have recalled on a lot of our communication that we've been sending out is targeted directly at stopping this, because it's what we're seeing in the real world. I would say one of the biggest differences between this attack path and Mario's attack path is this time we actually had a Palo Alto that was involved rather than a FortiGate. But again, the SSL VPN is still an SSL VPN. They can, and one of the things that with compromised credentials, similar to that original idea where they're able to, it's hard to distinguish what a legitimate account is or a legitimate login from a threat actor login. The other thing about the credentialed access is that it's just easy, right? If an attacker has a set of credentials that they can log in with, why worry about running these crazy black hat exploits when, again, you can just type in a username and password and then bam, you're right inside the network. So it's an extremely effective attack for the environment, or to get into the environment.
Quick question on that one, or a couple of quick questions actually. Are we seeing any additional methods of attack, or is it pretty well just compromised credentials and that's it at this point, or do we see anything like exploits?
Yeah, it's like Mario said, it's rare to see exploitation outside of like for initial access. Now, once we get into the environment and they're looking to escalate their privileges or laterally move, we'll start to see like utilization of things like Impacket or things like Mimikatz, et cetera, to exploit inside the environment. Not as much on the initial access vector. However, the one thing that is still very, very common is phishing. That is probably still one of the most prevalent ways to get initial access within the environment. A common one, if you've been kind of reading a lot of cybersecurity papers recently, has been a form of combining a IT scam in vishing. And when I say vishing, like a phone call, right? What they'll do is they'll actually spam the end user's inbox with thousands of emails, and then they'll give them a call. And they try to explain, like, hey, I'm from IT. And if you combine this, especially with things like AI voice changers and stuff, this can make this extremely dangerous. But they'll combine that with, hey, I'm from IT. I've noticed that you're getting a lot of spam emails. We need to go ahead and fix that. Can you install this remote assistance software, something like Zoho Assist or Screen Connect or Ultra VNC, which gives the attacker access to that internal machine. And depending on who they targeted, you could be a high profile account, but generally most of the time they're not administrators, so they'll escalate their privileges from there. But it's still a pretty common initial access vector there.
And then were there any differences between the credentials used in this case versus the last case, or rather how they got them?
So there is one thing that I would say in case one, when we were working at talking to the IT folks there and kind of knowing their environment, their password policies that they had were pretty robust, and the passwords that they utilized were pretty good. So it's unlikely that the attackers actually used a brute force method to get into the environment. The passwords are most likely stolen through like an info stealer or potentially from another third-party breach. However, in this case, when reviewing what the logs and kind of asking the IT staff what their password policies were and what the passwords were for the accounts in question here, this was most likely just a brute force attempt. And we'll see what I'll talk in more detail about exactly what that username and password was, but it was fairly obvious that they had just brute forced into the SSL VPN.
All right, thank you.
No problem. In fact, I think my first area here on the breakdown will actually get us into the username and account. So what we've noticed on case 2 was that an account titled Auditor was identified to have logged into the Global Protect VPN at 2:30 a.m. And in this case, a generic account called Auditor, and what I was hinting at before, the password for this account unfortunately happened to be Auditor. So it was username Auditor, password Auditor. That most likely took them seconds to grab. And one of the things, whenever we were investigating the logs before this 2:30 event time, we were actually seeing evidence that this was just getting hammered by bots and other automated password scripting tools. But one of the things, whenever we're looking at this login, of course, 2:30 a.m. is going to be very anomalous for ISDs. Most of the time, they're not, or school systems, they're not going to be logging in very late at night. Sometimes it does, as John and Mario said, that there are times that legitimate work is being conducted. But for this organization, this stood out. Another thing with this is we can see the client in this case was a Linux machine. Not very common for administrative work within school systems to see a Linux client actually logging into this. And then the other thing with the public IP, whenever we did the research on that, I believe that is a foreign public IP. I can't remember exactly where that's out of, but when we were looking at it, it definitely stood out. Now, so the next thing here is actually a part of that recon phase that we saw. So at 3:56 a.m., and what you're seeing here within this is actually the EVTX logs from the DC2K19B in this case. There is a file called netscanold.exe. This was a tool that the account was using, the compromised account, to scan the environment to see what they had access to or what they could potentially pivot to, laterally move, or just exploit. In some cases during recon, again, they have no idea where they're at, what's available to them. So they're just scanning the entire environment. And one of the things that we have found is that they're not really shy about that scanning. They're loud. They'll just come in and they'll run a full slant 24 with no stealth tactics involved. So it's just extremely loud, and again, very common as a part of that attack chain. And lastly, we actually did see, after reviewing some of the logs, that an unauthorized third-party account had logged into the domain controller. So for this particular organization, they had a third-party IT company, and at some point during the exploitation of this environment, the attacker actually got a hold of that account. So they were, and unfortunately, that account was a high level. It happened to be a domain admin. They were actually able to use that to run a lot of their malicious activity from. Now, what I want to take y'all through is how we actually stopped this or broke the chain again on this attack path. So here, once again, just a rehash of that attack chain. And similar to Mario's case, we have Centurion involved here. But in this case, we actually have our Scinary software that detected this attack. Again, as previously stated, the recon phase is almost unilaterally a thing that happens within these attacks. So what we developed the Scinary tool to detect that recon phase. And so we turn Centurion into essentially a honeypot within the environment. So whenever the attackers scan the environment, again, that slant 24, slant 16 CIDR, we pick up on that scanning behavior. There are a lot of legitimate tools that do that. IT admins will run those for administrative purposes. When we see them kick off at 2:30 a.m., and I'll show you kind of what that looks like here in just a second. Definitely a little anomalous, and we're going to want to alert on it. And right here, this is actually an example of the alert that was triggered by this attack that we got directly to our internal communication channel. And so here we can see at I believe this, 356, they ran the scan and we could see all the ports that they were connecting to. In this case, it was 139 and 3389. And 3389, obviously, RDP. So they're looking for ways that they can exploit the environment and laterally move. So what we saw here with the attacker IP being 10.200.251.101, that was actually the range for the Global Protect VPN pool. So we knew instantly as soon as this came in, okay, not only do we have a scan, but we have a scan coming from the Global Protect pool. That's extremely odd. Why is that happening? This isn't typically the behavior of this IT group. So as soon as this happened, we got this alert. This was immediately picking up the phone call, giving this user a call saying, hey, what's going on? And again, turns out was not them, unfortunately. But we did see that, and we can see at 417. In this case, again, our wonderful nighttime lead, Elijah, once again, kind of saving the day here, picking up the phone, giving a call to the IT admin, and kind of explaining, hey, this is what we're seeing. This is how you contain this incident, and this is how we remove the attacker's access. And at 457, this was actually our threat down EDR logs that we were able to pull from the domain controller, where we were seeing RDP brute force attempts on the domain controller. And in this case, we can see an account called, what were you doing, Mario? Were you doing this?
It was not me, Scout's Honor.
Yeah. It was actually a third-party account, again, that was named Mario, that happened to be there, and they were trying to RDP brute force. They did eventually get into that account. I think they just mistyped it the first time whenever they were running it. So what did we do to kind of not only stop this attack through detecting that recon phase, but what did we do to secure the environment going forward and completely shut down and shut out this attack? Well, one of the things with this one, like Mario had stated in theirs, a lot of times there's a misconfiguration within the SSL VPN, or really the authentication servers on firewalls. whenever they're doing LDAP syncs, they look at the entire directory. And in this case, this was an instance of this where instead of looking at a specific group or restricting access on the SSL VPN side on what groups have access to it, unfortunately, it was just pointed to the entire domain. So you've got service accounts like Auditor or Time Clock, or even the students in this case had access to this SSL VPN. And when you're referring to those service accounts, a lot of times they are high-level accounts. They do have weak passwords. And then we've even seen in some cases where student accounts get abused, largely because their first name, last name, some combination of those, and a student ID. And so if you have those firewall LDAP syncs pointed at the entire domain, that can be an issue. In this case, we actually went in there and we made the configuration changes to restrict that LDAP sync to only the required users. And after that, only the IT admins, because they were the only ones that actually needed access to the SSL VPN. No one else did. But it was one of those things that, they needed it to work. And so they went in there and set that up and left it at that point. So we went in there and fixed that for them and made that secure. Once again, very similar, reset all the passwords for the affected accounts. So the third-party account, reset the auditor account. I think we even just killed the auditor account. I don't think they were using it anymore, along with some of the other stuff. We checked additional accounts that they had created within the Palo Alto. There were a couple in there that were unknown, so we went and killed those. So there was a lot of changing of the accounts and deleting accounts. One thing I do want to point out here within the password reset step for this is that a lot of times there's the Kerberos user that exists within Active Directory. That Kerberos user, there's an attack called Golden Ticket that often gets abused. And so what we do is we always reset that Kerberos token twice. And the reason we do it twice is that Microsoft, and all their lovely wisdom, they keep that cached, the first password. So whenever you have to rotate it twice to dump that caching. And then lastly, after all the evidence that we'd gathered for this report, we actually power cycled the domain controllers. And the reason that we do that is if there is any malicious processes running in RAM, we want to clear those out. And this is really common. Attackers love to run scripts and stuff, get them running in RAM. So even if you think you've cleaned up everything, you've cut off all their initial access vectors, they still have these artifacts within the environment. And sometimes they can be set up to actually run the propagation scripts for things like the locker, or continue the exfiltration of data, or sometimes, reestablish that persistence method after you think you're good. So we almost always power cycle the domain controllers if they were touched. And in this case, they were able to actually get into the environment and RDP to the domain controller, but we'd shut them down pretty quickly. But out of an abundance of caution, we went ahead and power cycled those. And that kind of mediations. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I did have one question, just because you did mention that we were able to utilize EDR in kind of gathering some information on this one. Would this have been one where EDR would have caught this attack and possibly stopped it? Or I guess, what difference would EDR have made?
So EDR is always a very valuable tool in modern attacks. Even in case one, even though the attacker had disabled it, you can look at that and say that the attacker had to take time out of his attack chain to go and disable EDR. And in this case, we were able to actually isolate the domain controllers with our EDR tool to prevent any more of that attack chain progressing. It's hard to say on this one exactly if EDR would have fully detected it. It largely does at certain stages as they start to run scripts, either to start to exfiltrate data, they start the encryption process, or that set the stage for those processes. Again, they largely do love to run scripts, set stuff up in memory, set things up in scheduled tasks. All of those are things that our ThreatDown EDR tool is actually looking for and will alert on. But the thing about EDR is it's sitting on the endpoint, right? So that they have to get to the endpoint for it to see that behavior. So with Centurion, we're backing up that chain break, right, to the recon phase. we're detecting it way before any of the attacker even hits the endpoint. So we can start the remediation earlier in the chain, and that's key. So would EDR have detected this attack? Most likely. However, we always like to say, defense in depth. The idea of stopping that attack earlier in the chain, or at least alerting on that attack earlier in the chain, gives us as defenders way more time to contain the attack and eradicate the attack.
All right. Well, thank you for that one.
Yeah, no problem.
And then I will say at that point, I will go ahead and kind of open it up on the Q&A side. Y'all go ahead and start posting your questions. I do see that we just had one from Chad, and we'll get to that one in just a second. Right quick, I am going to go ahead and say, if you have any additional questions, if it's something that we don't get time to answer here on the webinar, feel free to contact us there at contact@scinary.com. You can email us your question. We can respond to it that way. Go ahead. Feel free to check out YouTube, the LinkedIn, all of those things. And a big thank you to Howard, our partner on this one, helping us to put this one together. So thank you to them. If you have not already gotten signed up with us, or if you have questions about our services and you want to get more services with us, or if you want to sign up for the first time, reach out to your local Howard rep, or you can email sales@howard.com to figure out who you need to talk to, and they will set you up, and we can get on a call, take you through the full catalog of everything that we do, and you'll probably be talking to me again. So I wanted to put that out there real quick. But let's see. So Chad was asking, can you speak to what can be done to better protect student accounts from being exploited? I think probably, Brazos, you'd be a good one to answer that one.
Yeah, so the student accounts are really fun because we understand the complications with student accounts regarding there's a lot of complexities with that, especially whenever you start mixing in like the younger kids, sixth grade, eighth grade and under. A lot of them, like MFA, is really hard to enable, if not impossible. Things like phones, you can't rely on them having phones or being able to know how to use that. You either, if you make their passwords complex, you've got the issue of them probably forgetting it over time. And then you get inundated with tickets on, can you reset this password? This is actually something me and our CTO have talked about at length, is like, hey, what is a good method on securing student accounts, especially at like a email level, but even internally. One of the things, obviously, it's going to sound really basic, but making sure that they don't have access to stuff that they don't need to. So, for example, like that SSL VPN, if you do have an LDAP sync, there's nothing wrong with that type of setup, but make sure it is restricted. Don't let the students have access to that. And it's not really the students you have to worry for. Now, in some cases, you do get those high school guys that are watching a video like Network Chuck or something and find out what's going on, and then they want to test out their skills. But for the most part, it's attackers abusing that. There are a couple of methodologies that I've seen. Again, it's kind of one of those things of what do you want to choose. I've seen it where a lot of people do have complex passwords for students, and then they give the people that are kind of responsible for those students the ability to reset that group of students' passwords and nobody else. I've seen that, so you reduce the ticketing of that, but it's not a great method, just because you are giving a high level control over to somebody that isn't particularly in IT. I've seen some people adopting MFA more regularly, even for students. We've had people reach out and say, hey, we want MFA on all of our students. Again, complications with that is how do we handle it? Is it hardware tokens? Then you've got the replacement for the hardware tokens, but it's difficult. I don't have a perfect answer, but it is something that we have been tossing around back and forth.
All right. And then another question. So this one coming from Chad saying, my Sophos EDR also provides a data lake that collects information to help determine what has happened, even if they clear the logs. And Mario, I think I know what I'm thinking, but I think you can probably think what I'm thinking. So I'll let you handle this one.
All right, and it seems more like kind of like a detailed statement as opposed to a question, but maybe this is more in regards to like how we handle things or how EDR handle things. So this is definitely going to be after the event. Thankfully, whenever we focus on things such as like our log forwarder or even Canary, we get those logs immediately, and it's a copy. So thankfully, we share a one-to-one traditionally with all the software that we deal with. But I mean, any logs are really good. It's the action that's taken on it. One thing that I want to kind of reiterate is those seconds matter. In these attack chains, even delaying them, a couple seconds can make a world of an impact.
And then just to kind of put out the thing that first crossed my mind when I read that one, was that with that data lake that Sophos has, that is going to be similar to what we do with Centurion, which is we take those logs, and Centurion has those logs. So if they do get wiped from wherever their point of origin is, it's still going to be backed up on Centurion. That's something that we can go back to, and we can search through to get a better idea of what's been going on. So having those logs backed up somehow, some way is absolutely useful. But like Mario was saying, it's more important not just to have the logs, but to be able to take the action. That's the big thing. But then I did also, there we go. Oh, sorry, got another one. We'll go ahead and jump over to this one, also from chat. He's saying, my Centurion is only set up with the DC logs right now. We have not configured for the rest of the servers yet. That is A-okay. Feel free, reach out to us, reach out to the team lead that is assigned to you, and we can help you get those rolled out if you need it. That is absolutely something we are here for. Like what I believe Braz was saying earlier on with the log forwarder, we can put that on any mission critical servers, so long as it is that mission critical. We don't want to just put it on everything, just because then that's going to be a lot of logs. But anything that is mission critical that you absolutely need to know about, put it on there. We can help you with that.
Thankfully, to add a little bit onto that, since I do kind of live in the SOC, I will here shortly after I will go ahead and walk to the pod for the team that's responsible for you, making sure that they reach out to you, making sure we have all the servers that you need on there. Thankfully, in efforts with our dev team, our CTO, it's got a lot easier than how it originally was. Now you just have to run an executable with the address of your Centurion. So I'll make sure that we reach back out to you and we get you settled where you need to go.
All right. I will say that is all of the questions I can see right now. Thank y'all again for joining us on this webinar for Breaking the Chain. And we'll have another webinar probably in the next 3-ish months. So keep an eye out for that one. We will look forward to getting to see y'all and talk to y'all again. And then again, if you have any questions at any time, feel free to reach out to contact@scinary.com or sales@howard.com. And y'all have a great rest of y'all's day.
Okay, later.
You.